Father Philip Mulryne. Here we are. I finally pinned you down after the best part of 15 years trying to get hold of you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
Obviously, you were still, you'd only recently retired from football when I first reached out to you.
Mm.
We'll come to what you're doing now, but when you look back on your career, how do you assess it?
Well, probably first of all, just like gratitude. Really, really grateful for the opportunity. Like if I think back to being a young boy in Belfast, obviously had the great aspirations to be a footballer and to play in England, but then to sign for United when I was 14, and then to work my way through the different teams and moving over, and that whole experience was amazing. And then to have a relatively good career, spanned like over 10 years, 11 years. You think it's like, from getting into the first team and things like that. So first of all, like gratitude, and then I suppose like any player, you're going to have regrets about, especially looking back, could I have done more? Could I have been more professional? Could have squeezed more out of my career? But I mean, again, you can always kind of pick holes in it, but I mean, just in a sense of like, that I did something that, that so many young men would dream of doing, and I had the privilege of doing it, So I would say, yeah, just proud of it, kind of few regrets, yes, but just overall gratitude for what I learned through the whole career, both as a man and also as a footballer, as doing it for a living, but also the tools and the things it's given me now, even what I'm doing now. So yeah, that would be the main thing.
So in terms of what you're doing now, how did you end up here from retirement? It was 2008, 2009. How did you find yourself in this walk of life?
Yeah, so it really started even before that. When I was at Norwich, the last couple of years at Norwich, I kind of started exploring again, like my faith. I practiced when I was a teenager, and then when I moved to England, and kind of, not through any real conscious decision, but just kind of left it behind. That word becomes all encompassing, and it just kind of drifted away from the practice of my faith. But I mean, it was always there in the background, even if there was kind of disconnect between the way I was living and things like that. So around 27, 28, kind of started to revisit, kind of started to read again, study again, kind of pray again in a real way, and then had a number of injuries, kind of not serious ones, but ones that kept me out for a month or 6 weeks, 8 weeks, all these different things. And then one of those injuries, kind of, I was able to return home, and I came home, and it was in that period where I returned home that kind of, again, I've said before, like my sister kind of brought me to a prayer group, and her husband, who's passed away at this stage, he brought me to the Legion of Mary, which is a Catholic organisation that looks after homeless people and alcoholics and things like that. So those two kind of things like really radically changed everything in the space of like very quickly, in the space of like 6 months, where I started to go back to Mass every Sunday, and then it became every day, and then going to the homeless shelter 3-4 times a week, and the prayer group once or twice a week. It started to really, I just felt a great fulfillment and a peace with it all that I'd never experienced before, so I just went along with it. And in the period of that 4 to 6 months at home, the whole question of vocation, what I'm going to do after, really came to the fore. And from nowhere, really, the idea of being a priest just came to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You speak about the disconnect, in other words, between your faith and the life that you were living. In as much detail as you're comfortable going into, how did that manifest, and what sort of form did that take?
So like Christianity in general, the Catholic faith in general, it's not just like an abstract kind of set of ideas that you just say assent to intellectually, or I believe that. It's a lived reality. We're all flawed, but I mean, there should be at least, for somebody who's serious about it, the intention to reform your life in line with this teaching, And so for many, maybe we would call them lapsed Catholics who were baptized, and then not practicing the faith, or it's not having an influence on their moral life. That would have been me, I believed in God, I believed I was proud to be a Catholic, but I wasn't going to Mass on a Sunday or even praying on a daily basis, and then certainly morally, I was more formed maybe by the culture around me than by the teachings of Christ or Christianity and things like that. So, like any young man in his 20s, maybe going into nightclubs too much, drinking too much, relationships with women, all these different things that, okay, kind of can be okay, kind of in moderation if you're kind of using them well and they're not dominating your life. But for a period of my 20s, when I was at the height of my career at that stage, I'd be definitely burning the candle at both ends too much, and enjoying the things, the trappings of the footballer lifestyle kind of a bit much. But I think it was all a symptom of, at different periods being not very happy or being injured for long periods of time, the disappointment with that. And so, yeah, I'd love to look back and think now, but wisdom comes with age and making mistakes and looking back on things. So I have to look back at it and think, okay, well, why did that happen 27, 28, 29, when I certainly really started to evaluate everything in a more serious way and pull away from the things that I knew weren't good for me? Why couldn't that have happened at 22? I don't know. But it kind of, the timing was right on those things, and I kind of, that 6 months at home, I just completely realigned my life, both morally, how I was living, to what I was believing was coming together,
I think you've spoken before about the emptiness that lifestyle felt. So did you know in the back of your own mind that this isn't me?
Yeah, I think anyone who goes through that kind of that stage, you'll always perceive that this is not a path that you can sustain for a long time that's going to bring you happiness. You make mistakes. You often kind of mistakes can be life changing. If you're going out too much, or you're dominated by alcohol, or you're dominated by any kind of addiction that's going to make you make bad decisions at some point in your life. So when you're in the middle of it as a young man, you're carried along, and there's no doubt you enjoy it. But I think there does come a certain point where you kind of realise, I've exhausted this. Why am I not content or happy? There must be more to life than just looking forward to the weekend, looking forward to the game, and then looking forward to going out after the game. There must be some. So that's how I would characterise it. A general kind of just absolute restlessness, where I was never just content, either at home by myself. It was always, what's the next thing? And that kind of led me on a journey, maybe to seek a more deeper way of life,
Do you think amongst your teammates that you had at United and Norwich, other clubs, Cardiff, do you think you would have been seen as one of the more likely or less likely to move into priesthood?
The most less likely. Okay, so that's what we kind of laugh about when I talk to some of them about it, because there's no doubt, I was, for a period at that time, certainly at Norwich, I was the guy that you rang if you wanted a night out, So, if some of the guys were married, kind of, if a good few of us were single or we had girlfriends at that stage. But I was very much in the thick of the, activity off the pitch and being out and loving all that element of it. The camaraderie it brought, the banter, all of that. And for a while at Norwich, not the problem is, but the situation is, if there was a couple of seasons where we were winning, and so there's a formula there where there's always a give and take with these things. You can do too much, but there's no doubt we were going out. I was going out maybe too much, but at the same time there was an unbelievable bond among the players. It was creating a certain spirit, and because we were winning, it was kind of, well, this is okay.
Yeah.
And then eventually it kind of, let's say, it catches up with you later in your 20s, physically.
Yeah.
If you can get away with it for a time. But there's no doubt I would be the least likely person to go into the priesthood at that stage.
Yeah. As soon as you went into it, how quick was that realisation once you went into the priesthood of, this is me?
Very quickly, yeah. The period in between officially retiring and going into the seminary to study was about a year, because I hadn't to enter the seminary you needed to have A levels, and I left school at 16, so I'd only done GCSEs. So I spent a year going to night school in Belfast to prepare for seminary. So it was like a university access course that gave you the equivalent of 3 A levels. So I did that in the period of that year, and then I entered the seminary in Belfast. And then I would say about in the first 2 months of the seminary, kind of I had this sense of, yeah, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life very quickly. You know?
And then what are the next steps on that journey? It's obviously, 12 years in or so.
Yeah, well, the first 6 years are what's called formation years. You're studying to be a priest, and it takes about 6 to 7 years because of the studies, philosophy and theology. And also there's the wisdom of the church in the saying, to have this time to really come to a place where you're convinced this is your vocation and this is where you want to spend the rest of your life. So there's a wisdom in taking that time. So in those years, I was 2 years in Belfast in the seminary. Then in the third year, I went to Rome and lived in Rome for the year in the Irish college there. And I was studying to be what's called a diocesan priest, so very much a priest in a parish, kind of a black suit, white collar. And then in the third year, I had a sense that I wanted to I felt more called to what's called religious life. So not a diocesan priest, but living in a religious community with brothers. Okay, and it was in Rome that I met the Dominicans, the religious order I belong to now. So I left the seminary in Rome, and I joined the Dominican order within 6 months. And then I started 5 years of training within the Dominicans before being ordained a priest. Yeah.
So now that you're here, what's a typical day now?
So we're here in Cork, and this is what's called the novitiate house. So this is where the novices come. The novices are the guys who come for their first year of formation to be Dominicans. And so I'm in charge of them. And so this is very much my daily kind of routine would be, well, we're up about 7 o'clock in the morning, kind of first thing in the morning, we've silent meditation for half an hour, and then we sing morning prayer together, and then we have morning mass, and that takes us up to about 9 o'clock, breakfast, and then for 2 hours between 10 and 12 I usually teach. So I'm teaching the novices classes. Then we've prayers again at midday, then lunch together as a community, we eat together, and then we've about 2 hours in the afternoon, our own free time. And so I use it for exercise or to keep fit, which I encourage the novices to do as well, because we spend a lot of time studying and things that need to be moving, and getting out and about. So we use that 2 hours for exercise. We come back around 4, and then we have a scheduled time of study where we're supposed to be studying for a couple of hours. Then we've evening prayer at 6 o'clock, and then we've supper in the evening together as a community, and then we've rosary and night prayers around 8:40, and the day finishes at about 9 o'clock, and you kind of start over again the next day.
So it's a packed day then?
Yeah, packed and very
regimented.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, kind of instills that discipline in us, and also kind of routine in life that you just get carried along with, and you cease to think about it. It's just, it's beautiful and peaceful and has its challenges like anything, but I mean but there's a great sense of purpose to it, like you're working towards something.
So when you do get a moment to yourself to think, to reflect, what kind of thing goes through your head? What do you devote your thinking to?
Yeah, so the Dominican order, each religious order has a particular, what the church calls a charism, a gift for the church, a particular mission that they're given. And so the Franciscan order would be devoted to kind of like the vow of poverty, so looking after the poor and soup kitchens and the homeless and things like that. The Dominican order from its inception was always about preaching and teaching, and so kind of teaching the faith and preaching in any kind of environment. And so our order always put a huge emphasis on study, not just to be academics or to be smart, but to be people who study the faith, study the currents in society, philosophies, the ideas that are going around in the culture, and being able to speak to that. And so, as I said to you there, we have a couple of periods a day which is dedicated to where there's silence, and you're dedicated to studying and reading. so that when you come to preach or teach, you have something to say, you understand the culture around you. And so those are the kind of things that study time is kind of just reflecting, reading. And then the different periods of meditation, like sometimes your mind gets a bit distracted and you could think back on your life, or if I'm alone in my room, thinking back at, this is amazing, I'm here, and you think back at the whole journey that takes you here, Yeah.
I mean, it's the saying, isn't it? Devil makes work for idle hands.
Mm.
It's quite astonishing, isn't it? The change in what you would do in your own head with your free time now versus, I imagine when you were at your height, if you were injured and you were looking, what to do that evening, for instance.
Yeah.
The mind goes to a very different place, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and like at the moment, as I say, free time that I get, it's kind of like, very simply, it sounds stupid, like just going for a long walk or something, and reflecting and letting the mind settle, and so that I come back to the life kind of re-energized, so it wouldn't be to go out and get overstimulated in any kind of environment like that. And then because I'm a priest, I would also be careful about how people know me, so how you're being perceived, so yeah, it's completely different, but it has a great sense of purpose and kind of, to use my time well and productively, whereas in the past, like you said there, you're running after things to keep you excited, and because the football life, there's huge highs, and there's no doubt, like physiologically, there's all sorts going on there with dopamine and highs and lows, and you're chasing it all the time, where now there's a sense of kind of rest and kind of purpose and contentment,
That must feel lovely.
Yeah, amazing, yeah. Now, it has its challenges, like anything, you're still human, and you bring your stuff into religious life that you deal with, but as a general sense, kind of, to be in a place where you're meant to be, living with brothers, pursuing the same goal, it has a lot of similarities to football life, although the goal is different and there's obvious differences, but there's an underlying kind of similarity to how I lived before.
You mentioned obviously you make sure you keep yourself fit. It's still very trim. Do you play at all?
No, we haven't played this year, but one of the priests who was here 2 years ago, there's a lot of young men that come to kind of our church, and so we started up a 5-a-side game on a Saturday, so we kept that going for about a year and a half every Saturday, which was great. We're going to get it restarted in September, so that's been great to play again,
Your team wins, sure.
Not really. These guys are in their early 20s, they're students at the local university.
Great, the football great.
So, no, the 5-a-side is great. You've still got the touch and everything and seeing it there, but no, I love it. It gets quite competitive, It's brilliant.
As competitive as training with Roy and Scalzi?
Nowhere near. Yeah, nowhere near training with those guys. It's a whole elite level of intensity and sharpness, and no let up every day. And constant. Everyone, the moment it's perceived, you're kind of taking it easy. People are on you. Yeah, so it's given me a whole insight into looking back now what it takes to be that 1% of an elite athlete in any sport, the characteristics it takes, and a great admiration for those fellas who sustained that over 15 years,
And with that realisation, also your appetite for preaching and teaching, you've been back in touch with the club on the alumni programme, haven't you?
Yeah, no, that was wonderful, because the first I was back about 9 years ago. I was chaplain to a college, Dominican college we have in Kildare, and I went over for a game against Newcastle with all the first year kind of pupils. So that was the first time that I'd been back for a game since I left. But this was the first time I was invited back, like by the club, to do something. So it was so exciting, And amazing, even just flying over, seeing the roads, seeing Salford, seeing the places, the whole emotional kind of side of bringing that back, the memories was unreal, And just being back in that environment, seeing some characters, like I said, Michael Clegg, I called to the training ground and chatting with him, and then just obviously the event itself, just having 20 minutes with Sir Alex, and just chatting and kind of meeting when he was there. Yeah, it was just wonderful. You know, I was a little bit nervous about it, like dressed like this, going back into that environment, what it would be like. People were so kind of curious and asking really genuine questions, you know.
Well, that's my next question. What? It's not a common sight, is it? So,
no.
How was it received? What did people make of it?
Yeah, well, the people who knew me obviously were, you know, obviously knew what it was and come and asked me loads of questions about what I was doing, what the life was like, but obviously the room was filled with like young kids as well from the academy and that, you know, and they probably think, look at me, he's this fella, what he's doing, what's he doing here, you know. And so then, as it was explained, kind of in the little short videos, kind of before the awards and stuff, obviously they realised that I used to play. No, but I found the whole experience like really encouraging and a real sense of the club, you know, the family atmosphere of the club that they're constantly trying to cultivate all the time. And so, yeah, it just really brought me back to when I was their age, looking at them, you know, 14, 15. Yeah.
You obviously got a lot of time and a lot of scope for reflection. And when you take a step back and you look at it, it's a story of redemption, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, like I think most people's lives, if they're honest, they go through those kind of, you know, valleys and different periods. Yeah, so I'd say like a turning point for me, as I've said before, would have been like being expelled from the Northern Ireland squad for one of the biggest games in our history against England, and then winning that game, missing out on that, and then being back in Cardiff, watching that game, and then the low that felt, and also like bringing embarrassment upon my family and things like that, you know. That was a huge turning point where I just, you know, really think that I have to change my life here. This is not going anywhere good. And so yeah, that started me on this journey, even though at the time I didn't think it would lead there. Like my plan was to really to play for as long as I could. You know, I was 29 then, to play to 35. I was going to think of doing coaching badges, which I'd done some already. Becoming a coach later on, maybe 35. That was my whole plan, to stay in the game, be married, have children, all these different things. And then just everything radically changed at that time, you know. And so there was sort of kind of a redemption there. Another story of redemption was like, also, like I missed a penalty for Norwich in the playoff final against Birmingham. And that was another low point professionally. Like I remember being kind of that night in that hotel, just crying all night, you know. Yeah, because I think Birmingham were staying in the same hotel as this, Celtic Manor, and they were celebrating downstairs and we could hear it. And I just remember that night, but the next season I scored quite a significant goal. I think I remember against Reading, kind of, and we got promoted that year, so that was kind of a mini redemption in football, you know. But yeah, where I am now to where I was at 28, really low and probably mildly depressed or something, you know, without even knowing it, you know, and seeking refuge in drinking and socialising and things like that. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Are you proud of yourself?
I never think about it in those terms. Yeah, no, I would never sit back and think in those terms, maybe, you know, probably because it's not complete. Obviously, I have faith in God, and it's not solely a, like, lift yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of project. I believe that He's been a part of it, leading me here, and so it hasn't all been my efforts. I really feel I've been given a gift, you know, that I've merely said yes to. You know, it's not something that I've done all myself, where I can sit back and think, yeah, you're great, you've done this. You know, I've merely responded, I think, to what I've been moved to do, where God believes I'll be truly happy. And so that's why I don't think I could turn around and say to myself, yeah, you've done great. Because humility is one of the greatest Christian virtues.
Yeah, fair play. But you're happy, you've got that peace.
Yes, yeah. And again, a peace, not it's not like a felt peace where you're like walking around all day and nothing bothers you. You know, it's just a deeper kind of contentment. You know, when you're in the right place, you know what you're supposed to be doing. You're not running after kind of any kind of goals that are kind of unattainable or kind of, you know, material goals. There's a liberation from that kind of rat race of pursuing that and the pressure of that, a general contentment with life, which is underlying, not necessarily felt all the time. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem. Been a pleasure.